Hey everybody, welcome to the videos from my core plays for week 11 of the NFL season over on DraftKings, or my 3 favorite cash and tournament plays on the entire slate. And we'll also talk a little bit about prize picks as well. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Cheat sheets, optimized ownership projections for the NBA and the NFL and the NASCAR and MLB once those seasons start back up again. So if you want to check it out, you know where to find it. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know this by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, for new signing up on Prize Picks, you can get a free money bonus that's instant deposit match up to $100 when you go to prizepicks.com, use the link down below, and use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think it'll be up for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And starting us off with the cash game, core play number 1, we have A.J. Dillon, RB1 for the Green Bay Packers this weekend, and he's only $6,200. And just to simply put it, he is way too cheap for the expected role he's going to have this weekend. I'm not only projecting him to be the highest owned running back in the entire slate, but the highest owned player. It just makes too much sense to me. This is a great spot versus Minnesota. There's no Aaron Jones taking away touches. He had over 20 carries last weekend, had 2 targets, had 2 rushing touchdowns, so we know he's going to be used around the goal line. He's a big bruising back. He can handle a heavy workload, but not be surprised if he sees 25 plus touches in this game, as long as the game doesn't get out of hand somehow, but it shouldn't. It's a very close spread. I assume the Packers will probably end up winning this game, but just $6,200 for the RB1 for the Packers, which has always been a good position to be in for fantasy purposes. Really hard not to like him. Minnesota is currently 28th DVA versus the run, 22nd versus running backs, allowing over 100 rushing yards per game. And this is a big bruising back. He has thighs the size of watermelons. Have you ever seen the picture? They are absolutely huge. He's not that easy to tackle. I do want to mention his props over on Prize Picks seems a bit too soft this weekend. Not insanely soft, but 76.5. He's going to get us 20 plus touches on the ground, which I think is probably a strong possibility. I like him going over that. DraftKings, I feel, typically has sharper lines than Prize Picks. They currently have him at 81.5, so I do think you are getting some decent value there if you do want to take the over, if you're a big believer in A.J. Dillon this weekend. And moving on to cash game core play number 2, we have another guy benefiting from someone else missing a game, but it's Michael Gallup here, $4,200, the new wide receiver 2 for the Dallas Cowboys, with the news that Amari Cooper is going to be out this weekend, which is just a massive boost for a guy like Gallup, because you're taking a Cooper out the field who's averaging close to 7.5 targets per game, over a 20% target share, very talented wide receiver. Take him off the field. This game is going to be pretty high scoring. 56.0 over in Vegas, 2.5 point spread. The KC defense is terrible. Gallup is in a prime position to just smash value of $4,200. I'm currently projecting him to be the highest owned wide receiver on the entire slate, especially in cash games, because people are going to flock to him because it just makes too much sense in tournaments. I mean, yeah, you'll see him lower owned, but people in cash games are just going to always eat up that value. And he does great out as the best point per dollar wide receiver on the entire slate as well. But game environment's going to be good. Game script should be good. They are 2.5 point dogs here, and they should be throwing the ball quite a bit. I think Zeke's in a good spot, definitely versus KC. He's a good tournament play, but I want exposure to the passing attack on both sides here. And if you're going with like a Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill / Travis Kelce stack, just running it back with Gallup can really offset their super expensive price points. Like, they're both very expensive. If you use Gallup, only $4,200, it's going to be very chalky, but really hard not to like him with the new position he's in without Amari Cooper this weekend, plus that KC defense is absolutely terrible. And I want to mention his prop over on Prize Picks, a little bit lower than what they have on DraftKings, about 5 yards lower. And they have some juice on the over on DK as well. And I don't think it'd be too hard for him to go for 49.5, especially if the Cowboys are not getting blown out or anything, but playing from, a score behind. They're just going back and forth, and both teams actually play at a pretty fast pace. So I definitely could see a lot of these skill position players hitting their overs in this game. Moving on to cash game, core play number 3, yet again, another guy who's benefiting from someone being out or injured. And it's my name is Jeff Wilson, $5,100. He was just way too cheap for being the RB1 for the San Francisco 49ers. The matchup versus the Jaguars, they haven't exactly been that bad versus the run this year. They've been terrible versus the pass, but they're still 17th in terms of fantasy points allowed per game for the running back position. But the 49ers are just so good at scheming their run game, and it's just, I have no worries about Jeff Wilson. Plus, we've seen him have some pretty good blow-up games in the past. Not saying he's going to come out here and drop 30 fantasy points and over like 150 rushing yards, but no Hasty, no Raheem Mostert, obviously. They hate Trey Sermon. He's probably going to be active, but I doubt he plays or gets any snaps. They've used Deebo Samuel as a running back last weekend over Trey Sermon. They just hate the guy. And there's no Eli Mitchell this weekend. Well, I guess currently he's doubtful, but that usually means they're not going to play. So assuming he is out, Jeff Wilson is basically the only running back. He had 10 carries last week. It was his first action of the year. Like, Kyle Shanahan's not afraid to give him the ball. I mean, in the past, he's trusted Jeff Wilson, so I would not be surprised if we see 20-plus touches here at Jeff Wilson. That's way too cheap for a guy that's $5,100. 49ers offense, well, I know Jimmy G's not that exciting. They can still move the ball and score points, and I don't think we'll have to worry about Jeff Wilson too much. I feel like he probably falls into the end zone at some point. Hopefully he catches a couple of passes. At this price point, it won't take much to hit value here, and I like Jeff Wilson's situation more than I do other guys in this price range. And if we're looking at his props over on PrizePicks, currently sitting at 73.5 compared to 79.5 on DraftKings. Plus, there's juice on the over on that 79.5 on DK as well, so I wouldn't mind hitting that. And then moving over to the tournament side of things, we have Nick Chubb here as our GPP core play number one, $7,800. He is returning off the COVID list, so his legs are extra rested. There's no Kareem Hunt still. He's still in the IR. Dearness Johnson will be there, but Nick Chubb is going to get the majority of the workload here. And Nick Chubb is just one of the best pure running backs in football. I realize he doesn't really offer you any receiving upside, which kind of kills his floor a little bit, which is why he's not as safe as guys like Christian McCaffrey or some of those other guys in similar price points. But what he can do on the ground is just about as good as any running back in football, if not the absolute best. Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, kind of in that same tier where they're just so good at just being pure running backs, not like in terms of being in the passing game. Jonathan Taylor is using the passing game more so than Nick Chubb, but this is a great spot versus Detroit. This is a great game script. I just don't see how he doesn't annihilate this Detroit defense. The Browns are currently 9.5-point favorites, 27.25 implied team total, which Baker Mayfield has like injuries all over his body. He's playing with a torn shoulder. He's got banged up knee, banged up leg, pretty much banged up everything. So I can't imagine all those points are coming from the passing game. So it's probably going to be a heavy dose of Nick Chubb and maybe some Dearness Johnson here or there. Yeah, Baker will probably throw a touchdown to one of the random tight ends, but Nick Chubb should be able to do a lot of damage on the ground. He's currently averaging over 100 rushing yards per game this year on 6 yards per carry. Even if he doesn't get like a ton of volume, like Nick Chubb is never one of those guys that gets that Derrick Henry type volume, but he's always very efficient, only averaging a target per game. But the Detroit Lions are currently 29th DVA versus the run, and they're allowing the third most points per game in the running back position, and also over 100 rushing yards per game. Nick Chubb, the reason he's a tournament play for me is just because he's not involved in the passing game. We have other good cheap running backs that I think on a point per dollar basis, on average, will perform better than Nick Chubb, just in terms of what their salary is. But Nick Chubb's ceiling is as high as any running back on this slate. Like, he could easily get 150 plus and 2 to 3 touchdowns in this game, and I would not be surprised about that. I also like his PrizePicks prop over 82.5. I just don't see how that doesn't hit. Unless he gets injured or the Browns just don't give him the ball for some reason, I would be very surprised if he can't get over 100 rushing yards in this game. DraftKings has him at 88.5, PrizePicks at 82.5. Definitely like the over on PrizePicks this weekend. And moving on to GPP core play number 2, we have Brandin Cooks at $6,000, wide receiver 1 for the Houston Texans. And earlier in the week, I thought Brandin Cooks was actually going to end up being quite chalky. But as the week progressed, the slate progressed, things have changed, guys got ruled out. Does not look like Brandin Cooks is going to see much ownership whatsoever, projecting him to be 10% or lower, which it's a great spot versus Tennessee. It's a good game script, which it always is for the Texans because they're always trailing. Quarterback play can't hold him back. We know Cooks is very talented, but the guy gets all the volume in the world. It's just a matter of if they're good throws or not. But he's averaging 9 targets per game, 700 receiving yards, and nearly 6.5 catches on a 30% target share and nearly a 45% market share of the team's yards. He also has a 76% weighted opportunity share, which is only behind Devontae Adams on this slate. I realize that's not meaning as much as having like a 68% weighted opportunity share from a guy like Tyreek Hill on a much better offense, but the guy is hyper-targeted, and this is the best matchup you can ask for as a wide receiver versus the Tennessee Titans, as they're allowing the most points per game to the position, over 210 receiving yards, despite being 9th DVA versus the pass, and the Texans find themselves as 10.5-point dogs, so they should be throwing the ball a ton, as they typically have to in Cooks. Even if it's in garbage time, I think this is a great spot, and if he's going to go lower owned, then I definitely like being overweight here. Currently, PrizePicks has him at 63.5, which is less than his average on the season, and DraftKings has him closer to 70. And if it just ends up working out, he sees softer coverage at the end of the game. If they're just getting blown out, the Titans just play some softer defense, I could definitely see him getting over 63.5. Maybe he struggles more in the first half because Tennessee's still trying their best, then at the end, maybe he can get a little bit softer. And moving on to our third and final GPP core play of the week, we have Michael Carter, RB1 for the New York Jets at $5,800. Now, he's not the only guy that gets touches back here. Ty Johnson is still involved, but for the most part, this is the guy you want in the backfield. Typically seeing around 10 to 16 carries over the past month, has over 30 targets the past month as well. You got to keep in mind, though, That is including a 14 target game, which is a bit of an outlier, but the guy is a good pass catching back, and they will use him in that role. I would not be surprised if he has 5+ targets here. I don't think Joe Flacco will have a problem dumping it off to Michael Carter because, I mean, they're probably going to be trailing. They're always trailing. It's the New York Jets. Maybe they surprise us here versus the Dolphins, but this is a good spot. They started the year absolutely awful versus running backs. It got a little bit better. They're still a bottom half team, though, ranking 17th versus running backs. I don't think Michael Carter will have any problem here whatsoever, especially with how involved he is in the passing game. But the thing I like the most is probably this receiving yards prop over on Prize Picks. It's currently at 20.5. He hasn't been less than 30-something the past month now. And he is also at 43.5 for his rushing, which I'm not really as confident in the rushing, but I think the receiving is, I don't want to say an easy over, but I definitely think it's quite likely he goes over that yardage amount. DraftKings has him a little bit higher at 24.5 and 48.5, so I think we are getting some pretty soft lines over on Prize Picks there. And I do want to mention the reason I do find him as a good turnip play rather than a cash play is just because there are so many good value running backs in a similar price point, like Mark Ingram, James Conner, A.J. Dillon, David Montgomery, Darrell Williams. I don't know if I mentioned Mark Ingram yet, and Jeff Wilson. Like, they're all in that same price range, and all these guys are going to get some ownership, and no one wants to play a New York Jets player, which I totally get. It's not fun watching the Jets, but I do think Michael Carter and even Corey Davis at $5,000 do make for some pretty good GPP plays on this weekend's slate. And with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. You guys can leave in the comments down below who your core plays are for this weekend, whether it be cash games or tournaments. And if you want to take that one step further, become a official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Lots of extra content over there, in addition to the free stuff that we have over on YouTube. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by Prize Picks. Just you versus the projections. And as of right now, if you're new sign over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think that'll be it. I will stop rambling. I wish you guys the best of luck on Sunday and enjoy the rest of your weekend.